Good morning, good year, It seems like everyone is talking either about Donaldson or the Donald.
Yeah, it's the same word.
Okay, today's shir is sponsored by Arthur and Molly Kaplan. We're not here, but we do thank them. It's to commemorate the Yorkshides of Molly's sister Esther Velvel. So we do thank Molly and Arthur and the Neshama Shaban Aliyah. We thank you for coming during this busy season, during this Thanksgiving. So I'm thankful for the fact that we still have a shir. And we see you in 3 weeks from now as well, meaning we have a Chag coming up, so obviously we'll be doing other good things. Now, Parashat Haazinu, which you could find on page 1100 in your art scroll. We are dealing here with several parshiyot that are preparing a nation to enter into the promised land without their leader. A significant adjustment is necessary for the nation to survive. And towards the end of last week's very short parasha, Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, listen here, the way things work with the God of Israel is that you are entering this land, you have a mission to fulfill there. You have a mission to transmit values, and this is a very sensitive land that if you don't live by these values, the land simply will reject you. So therefore, I need you to remember the significance of your role, and you are to record. Kitvu lachem, we are told in last week's parasha. Let's find the pasuk. And verse 22, we are told that he wrote, or we'll go a little bit backwards to verse 19 on page 1096, where Moshe Rabbeinu tells the people, Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot, go ahead and write this song, Velamda et bnei Israel, and teach it to the children of Israel. And it should be something that is placed in their mouth because it is a witness. This song, now what is the song? So literally, there's no question that the pshat is, what is the song that is being referred to here? Parashat Haazinu. Nevertheless, the rabbis tell us that the mitzvah to write a Sefer Torah, where there is indeed such a mitzvah, is derived from this verse, from these words. Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot. Now, this is not going to be the first time that we have a rabbinic reading that doesn't fit with the simple explanation. But nevertheless, there's a need to put the two together. So comes Maimonides. And the Rambam tells us the following. You should know. There is a mitzvah to write a Sefer Torah. The way we know it is because the Torah tells us, Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot, record this song. Now you're not going to just write one section of Torah. Once you write one section of Torah, which is Parashat Haazinu, so you need everything else with it. It can't stand alone, right? Which is very interesting. It's like saying, I would like to order a doghouse, and once I'm already ordering a doghouse, I'm already going to buy right next to it the whole house. I mean, it's a little bit odd, la'avdil, of course. But what it seems to be telling us is that this Parashat Haazinu is a very significant part of our tradition. It's the linchpin, in essence, of our Torah. So there was a tradition by some where children would memorize this song. I can tell you that I'm familiar, at least with the first half, very well. Today we davened here not long ago, and I was asked to lane, and I laned. It's a very short laning on a Monday morning, especially Parashat Haazinu, and I learned it, and then afterwards someone asked me, was this your bar mitzvah? What part? Because I knew it. Well, Parashat Haazinu seems to be very significant. There are teachings there. That's where we're going to try to understand the significance of this section. Now, Shira, in the Torah, in Tanakh, there are several, quote-unquote, songs. What two come to mind? Shirat Hayam. Shir HaShirim is like it's all one. It's a book that's all a song. That's correct. But Shiras Devarim. Fine. So now, if you open, I'm not going to open a Sefer Torah, but I will open a Tanakh that gives you the layout, which you are familiar with from many Chumashim. That when you have the Shira, this is the layout. The layout, if you could see, is that it has a line, right? Gap, words, gap, and then under it, you will have, under the gap of the upper line, you will have words in the lower line, and then the gap in the second line will be under the words of the upper line. You familiar with this? You are familiar with it.
You mentioned it once.
I mentioned it once?
Tell him when.
Delete the tape. In this parsha I talked about it?
No, in Parsha's B'Shalach.
B'Shalach. Oh, wow. Scary when people remember things so well. It's nicht good. I thought only jokes. I have to be mindful of. Now, this is a shira, and the same thing applies to the shira of Devarim. The same structure. I have struggles. You're going to have to trust me on this one, but it is like the same way. Now, on the other hand, there are times there are other sections of Tanakh where the structure is unique. For example, in the book of Yehoshua, it talks about the 31 kingdoms that lived in Israel. 31 kingdoms. Now, we always talk about the fact that there were 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael. So why do we say now that there were 31 kingdoms there? It seemed to be that there were 31 nations in the region that had an appreciation or a value for Eretz Yisrael, and they had some kind of embassy there. An embassy which technically belongs to their country. Like in Israel, the police station is known as Migrash Harusim, right? It's the Russian compound. Why? Because at one point in the 19th century, it was an area that was owned by the Russian government. We thank our sponsors. We'll mention again that the neshama indeed of Esther Bat Velvo should have an aliyah. So, when we talk about 31 nations, what are we referring to? 31 areas, perhaps they had a little bit of a castle there. All these nations were hostile towards our nation. And when we enter into Eretz Yisrael, we conquered them. And there's a list that is provided, a list of these nations appear in the book of Yehoshua. And look at the structure of the names. You see it? It is different than the Shira. It is different than the Shira. And what? Similar to Aseret B'nai Haman. And the rabbis tell us the following that you should know. There's a term for it. This one is called Ariach al Gabei Ariach, Levana al Gabei Levana, meaning it is brick on brick and blank on blank. On the other hand, you hear the idea, brick upon brick. On the other hand, the Shira of Dvorah, the Shira by the Yam, that is known as an Ariach al Gabei Levana and Levana al Gabei Ariach. Blank on brick and brick on blank. And what's the idea behind it? So the idea behind it is that anything that, just as you build a wall, not that I've done so, but from what I understand, that when you construct a wall and you're using bricks, you're not going to put a brick on a brick, but rather you're going to stack it where there's going to be a brick on, not the gap, but on the seam. Purpose, of course, being that you want to have a sturdy structure. So too, these shirot which are sturdy for our identity, they remain with us for eternity. We want them to be long-lasting, so therefore it's Ariach al Gabei Levana. When it comes to these 31 nations, foreign entities in Eretz Yisrael, the one who uproot us, right? peace accords are not going to work with them because they have no desire in us to be there, period. So we don't want them to be in existence. We want them to be on a very shaky foundation. That's why it's a levena al gabe levena. And so too, the Aseret Bnei Aman. This is what we are told by our rabbis. Magnificent. Now, the problem, of course, is that if you look at Parashat Haazinu, which is a Shira, and even in the Chumashim you have here, on this, it appears to be a structure that is not stable, that is not sturdy. So how does this fit into the picture? But let's first start with reading these magnificent words and see what the message here of the book is. So here we have on page 1100, Haazinu hashamayim vadabera. O heavens, give your ear, because I shall speak. V'tishma haaretz imrepi, may the earth hear the words of my mouth. So obviously, heaven and earth play a role here. Heaven and earth play a role here. And reason being is that the world cannot survive without values. The values are taught by the people of Israel. The people of Israel, if they become comfortable and forget their responsibility, they're going to forget the fact that they are educators, that they are teachers, and therefore planet Earth will be in deep trouble. It's a greater threat than global warming, right? If there are no values here, if it's a world where there's a rejection of a higher authority, of ethics, the world will not survive, we are told. And then in verse 2, God continues with what appears to be a metaphor, that may my teachings drop like rain. Ya'arof kematar likhi. Tizal ketal imrati, may my utterances flow like dew. And like the winds, or the storm winds on vegetation, sirim alei deshe, ukirvevim alei esef. Fine, this is more an opening statement. Verse 3, when I call out, Kishem Hashem ekra, Havu godel lelokenu, ascribe greatness to my God, to our God, when I call His name. Fine. Jewish presence in the world is not always easy. Being a Jew, right, there are times that it's difficult. Now, in general, we are always encouraged to see the good in being a Jew and not to be kvetchers, right? Don't kvetch. Appreciate the fact that you have what can be labeled as a golden yoke. We have responsibility, but it's a very value one. But if you open any book or if you speak to a survivor, you know very well that this fact that we were taken by the Almighty and became the chosen nation is not always pleasant. And I have no doubt that for many of the people going through, Auschwitz and Treblinka, Bergen-Belsen, they would be happier if they wouldn't be, quote-unquote, the chosen people for what they suffered. And what's interesting to note is that the rabbis take the word ya'arof, first word in verse 2, which is translated as it will drop, right, like rain. But there's another word where there is a very harsh connotation in the word ya'arof. As Avi is mentioning, egla arufa. Egla arufa, when they would behead the calf, when there was a corpse found between two cities, there was a need to publicize the event because then people would come out and share some information where perhaps they could catch the perpetrator. So they would have this massive ceremony of beheading the calf. Beheading. Ya'arof kematar likhi. Right? Now, by the way, rain too. Rain is great, right? Rain is awesome. Vegetation. But have you ever walked home from shul and it was pouring, right? And believe me, odds are that moment you were thinking, oh, what a bracha, the farmers can have rain. Odds are you were thinking gewalt, right? I feel it's my undershirt already is soaking, right? You've had that. We understand that there's a bigger picture. We're mature enough to know that there's a big picture here, and it's a necessity for our survival. that you need in Eretz Yisrael. They train people well there. That when it rains, people say, Baruch Hashem, Gishmei Bracha, there's rain, the farmers need it. Here we feel a detachment. Intellectually, we know that there is a need for rain. But believe me, it could be quite challenging. You say, Rabbanu Shalom, let it rain, but it should start at midnight and end at 5 a.m., right? But not right now, not at 7:15 when I'm walking home from shul. Ya'arof kematar likchi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu lakach otanu, right? We read the verse, Hanisai Elokim lavo lakachat lo, goy mikerav go, we were taken. So this is a warning here, that this is a song that is really the history of the people of Israel. That's what it's all about. However, you should be aware of the fact that it's not always going to be easy. When you have responsibility, it's much easier to live life with no responsibility. You have responsibility. It's an awesome responsibility. There's awesome reward for it. There's no question. And in the big picture, there's nothing greater than our contribution as a nation. There are going to be moments that it's going to be Ya'arof kematar likchi. Now, that's message number one. Message number two, and to give a little bit of an explanation to verse 3, let's understand what's being told in verse 3. Kishem Hashem Ekra, as I call out the name of God, ascribe greatness to our God. And then there's a description, a little bit, as we'll see soon, of God and history and the relationship between the two. So what's happening here with Kishem Hashem Ekra? Notes the Sforno. So we're dealing here with the late 15th century authority. And he says the following. This song is going to talk about the history of the nation. The nation of Israel, we are optimistic in the long run. Why is it? We are believers that history has purpose. That eventually there's a return. That eventually there's a messianic era. However, the period leading to that messianic era is going to be very, very dark. This is something that has reference in Chumash, has reference in the Talmud, a dark period leading to the final redemption. And I'm quite sure, or I could say I'm 100% sure, that we've seen a very, very dark period, because not just Jewish history has not provided what a Holocaust produced, but world history has not produced the Shoah. And you think about the Shoah, and you think about the darkness of the Shoah, it is something that the text indicates. There's going to be a dark period leading to that light. That's how things are going to work. So Sforno notes that Moshe Rabbeinu prays to the Almighty. He prays to the Almighty that when, indeed, that darkness comes, people should still give greatness to God. One more time. When that period of darkness occurs, right? When I'm going to go ahead, when I'm going to go ahead and share with you soon, Moshe tells us, of dark periods of the people of Israel, I pray now that when they occur, people shall still give greatness to God. Because naturally, anyone who survived, anyone who went through that darkness, you know what would be the natural thing for them to do? Reject it all. You got to be meshuggah to still have faith in God after seeing what you went through, after losing family members, children, the darkness. You read any text you pick up, it is impossible to read it, how much more so to live through it, right? And what would be the natural result of such a thing? What would be the normal thing to do? To say, Rabbanu Shalom, thank you very much. Don't exist, doesn't make a difference to me. We're finished. That would have been the natural tendency. And that would have been expected, and perhaps, right, no one would, given. Moshe Rabbeinu davens. Moshe Rabbeinu in verse 3 says the following. Ki Shem Hashem Ekra. I'm going to call out the name of God, meaning I'm going to pray. Shem Hashem Ekra. I'm going to pray now that when that darkness occurs, people shall still give Godel le'Elokeinu. They shall still give greatness to God. What's greatness to God? Still have faith. Have the ability to still recognize that there is a creator, right? When you see a Holocaust survivor, I think during Slichas, right? We have during Slichas. So when I came here a few years ago, Kalman Fischlinski, so sein gesund, Kalman Fischlinski would daven here Slichas. And there is nothing more inspiring, right, there was nothing more incredible than thinking that here is a person that experienced the darkness of all darkness, right? Lost everything, and he's smiling away and he's praying to the Almighty, right? Recognizing it. Where does he get the courage to do that? Havu God Elokim. This is Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer, that people should still have the ability of giving greatness, of recognizing that there is a great God when they saw everything, right, but that. That's what is occurring here. This is an incredible statement as an introduction to what history, the pain of Jewish history, is going to be all about. You know, they say in the name of Rav Soloveitchik that the existence of a Jewish state is a sanctification of God. Why is it? When the Jewish people, when we're quote unquote chosen, right, and you look at our state in 1945 after the Shoah, it is a tremendous desecration of God. The merciful God, has his beloved children, right? Bnei Bechorei Israel, and look what they went through, right? That is a desecration of the name of God. Meaning, it seems absurd that these are a chosen people, that the values of the Jews, it seems absurd that this is a nation that really carries the banner of God what they went through. But then, within 3 short years, look what they have, a Jewish state. And then 19 years later, right, a supernatural miracle, they reconquer Yerushalayim. So all this is seen as a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God. Right? And that basically, showed the world again that yes, we can't understand the darkness, but it's not random because look at the light that they are experiencing. So therefore, in verse 4 we are told, you should know, Hatzur, the Almighty, is Tamim Ha'alo. He is perfect. Kol Rachav Mishpat. Faith teaches us that all his paths are just. He is a God of faith. Right? There is no iniquity there. En avel, tzaddik v'yasharu, he is righteous. And if there is destruction, it is not him, but it is his children. Fine. I'm going to skip to wanting to go a little bit through the history of our nation. Look at verse 7. We are told to zechor yemot olam, a term that is used often. Zechor yemot olam, remember the days of yore. Binu shlot dor vador, understand the years of generation of generation. And sha'al avicha v'yagetcha, ask your father. Skenecha v'yomru, ask your elders, they will tell you. And you should know that if you look at the history of the world, in verse 8, when the Supreme One gave the nations their inheritance, behanchel, the Elyon, God, goyim, nations, when he separated people, bahafrido bnei adam, Yatsev gvulot amim, he separated or he set the borders of the nations corresponding lemispar b'nei Israel. We talk about the 70 nations, even though in the United Nations there are 192, but we talk about the 70 nations, that corresponds to the number of the Israelites. Fine, so you could say that it shows our significance, that we have a mission towards the world, therefore our number, the number that it was first used to describe our status as a nation when we arrive in Egypt was 70, so therefore it corresponds to the 70 nations of the world. But there's something else here. In other words, this is a basic understanding. We have a role to humanity because, look, he established the boundaries of the nations corresponding to our number. But there's another explanation that's given here. I have memories. A lot of my childhood memories of news came from Time magazine. Now, you ask why Time magazine? Because my father would get Time magazine. And Time magazine, especially when we lived like in Mexico or in Israel, was a holy vessel, meaning it was a tashmish kedusha, because we knew very well that we weren't supposed to touch it, or God forbid ruin it, right, before it was covered by my father. This was like something one of my brothers says that he would never read Time because he's still afraid that he's going to damage a page before Abba had the chance of looking through it. So this is Time magazine. So from a very young age, I would go at the pictures, not the words, were things that had an impact on me. The pictures from Time, I still remember there was a terrible aviation tragedy. It was either 1977 or 78 on some island where 2 Boeing 747s crashed. And I remember and it was a foggy day, and it mentioned something about a crash in the clouds, something like that. And I never understood, like, if it was in the clouds, why are they on the ground? Like, the pictures confused me very much until years later I was able to go back and clarify. Now, among the images I have was an image of Time magazine where there was the war between Iraq and Iran in the early 80s, and Time magazine had a picture of a bomb on the border between these two countries, and there was a big bear on one side watching, and there was a bald eagle on the other side watching, observing it, right? Now, years later, when people would ask me about metaphors in the Talmud talks about all kind of odd metaphors, a big fish that people would barbecue on top of a big fish, or would talk about this gigantic bird that would lay an egg, and the egg that was laid destroyed a city. And people think that these are absurd things, and my answer would be, if let's say in 2,000 years from now, someone finds the cover of that Time magazine, right? They would think that it was a children magazine because you have a picture of an eagle and a bear, right? Obviously, it's a magazine that's for children. Little do they know that the bear represented the Soviet Union and the bald eagle represented the United States. So you have to understand an era to understand the message. That was something that I was able to convey from that cover. But nevertheless, I was aware of the war, that there was a war between Iraq and Iran. And I remember asking my father, is it a good thing, a bad thing? If I'm not mistaken, he said something like, when there are two nations that want to destroy you, and they are fighting one another, that is actually not such a bad thing. That was the message. Iraq and Iran, if you think about when in the 1990 invasion of Kuwait, what they did there in Kuwait, right? And imagine if Chas v'Shalom, right, they would have put all their energy together and do what they did to Kuwait. Imagine what they would do to the Jews. Can you just think about what these countries would do? Right, the cruelty that exists of ISIS, this is to one another. These are their same mishpacha, quote unquote, the cruelty that is done. Imagine what they would do to the Jews of Israel. One of the miracles that exists is something called nationalism. Nationalism. The fact that nations view themselves, have an identity. In other words, you talk about the Middle East, they call it tribalism more, because their national identity has nothing to do with Iraq, it's all artificial. There are tribes, but this identity, right, that nations view themselves as different. And I hate you because I'm from this side of the river, and you hate me because you're from the other side of the river. The gvulot, these boundaries that were set by God, really saved the people of Israel. Because if you have a United Nations, the fact is, the United Nations is going to be brutal on Israel. And to prove it to you, there is a United Nations, which is, the United Nations Human Rights Council, right? What are they involved in, right? You think about the absurdity. We as Jews have to be extremely against any concept of a United Nations that is not a United Nations that is based on our teachings in Yerushalayim. We do believe that that there is indeed such a concept of a force that unites, but it has to be based on our values. So if you look back at this verse, God is telling the children of Israel, He established the borders of people, Yatsev Gvulot Amim, due to the fact that Klal Yisrael will be a very small number. When you say lemispar, it could mean corresponding to the numbers, or it could mean due to the small amount of Jews, due to the fact that there may be a mispar, a very small number, therefore there are boundaries, therefore there are what we would call nationalism. So this is a little bit about the history. It's a text about the history of the world. It's a text about the fact that the nation of Israel gets comfort in Eretz Israel, gets comfort. And when they get too comfortable, they forget about their mission. They forget about their mission, and what happens? HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and brings reminders. This is the text itself. But now, back to our original question. The original question, why is it structured? Give me the right words in Hebrew. Why is Haazinu structured? Levena al gabe levena, ariach al gabe ariach. Why is it? This song is to tell us that we are not, believe it or not, a sturdy nation. Naturally speaking, Jewish existence is very, very shaky. Naturally speaking, We are not a nation that are secure on our own, right? In other words, when we talk about, the fact, and sometimes it's a bit frightening when you hear people from Israel talking about, the fact that we have an army, and we have high tech, right? We have high tech, so therefore we're in good shape, right? The world will need us. And when we go ahead and we send out to Haiti our field hospital, the world will recognize, we have to realize that that's not enough, it's not going to work. That's not going to give us stability. Because the fact is, anything we do, hasbara is a good thing. But you could do hasbara from today till tomorrow. If you forget who you are, it is not going to be long-lasting. Jewish presence in Eretz Yisrael, or Jewish existence, period, is very, very shaky. The only way we survive is with an awareness of our identity. And this is what this song is about. Don't think that you are don't think that you are a wall that's levenal gabe ariach. You're not. This is what you are about. Shaky existence. That's Jewishness. Shaky existence. You think about what's happening in France, right? And we had not long ago a speaker here, right? That even the Shoah, right, where even the Holocaust, where Jews had to, escape or were locked up or sent away, they never felt that it was France that was rejecting them. They felt that it was an external force that rejected them. Here you have a situation that it is the essence of France, right, that is bringing upbringing, that you have the anti-Semitism that is coming to the front. Jewish existence is shaky. That's the theme, and that's the message of Parashat Haazinu more than anything else. One more thing I would like to... So that's we could go through the words and the difficulties and the message, but I want to end off on something a little bit more positive on page 1110, where Moshe Rabbeinu is told, this is really God's last commandment to Moshe, to make his way to the top of the mountain, right? You've ever hear of Martin Luther King's talk in Memphis the night before he was shot, right? I've come to the top of them. I've seen the promised land. I don't know if I'm going to be making it there. That was Martin Luther King the night before he was shot, and he stood there in a church in Memphis, and he talked about the fact that he has reached the top of the mountain. He sees the promised land, meaning he sees better days for the cruelty that existed toward the African Americans. He sees it. I don't know if I'm going to be crossing with you. That was basically his theme, as if it was prophetic. So obviously he got this vision. He was a man. He was a very decent person, Martin Luther King. There's no question about that. And he got his theme, his message from, he gets the metaphor from what is occurring here. But in verse 52, in the last verse, where Moshe Rabbeinu is standing there, and he's seeing the land that he is yearning to enter into. So he is told in verse 52, Ki mineged tireh et haaretz. You're going to go ahead and see the land from a distance. V'shama lo tavo, but you're not going to enter there into the land that I give to the children of Israel. Right? So you know the question. It seems, God is taunting him here. You're going to see it, but you're not going. Well, what's the idea of putting him there and spelling it out? Guess what? You could see the land, but you can't make it. So, when Sukkot is coming, and it is coming, it's in a week, believe it or not, it's one of those Yom Tov that just hits you, because you don't think about it until after Yom Kippur, and then it's there. And we have challenges because we, like between Mincha Marav, we want to study a few of the halachot, and we have, you could spend 2 months, and we only have basically, a day if we're lucky. So now, one of the things that bother me, right, is the fact that sometimes children come back from school, and it's a holiday, you could discuss all kind of things. And they discuss, what do they bring home usually? What's the arts and crafts that's most popular? The ushpizin. Now, why would that bother me? It's about Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. They're nice, they're fine people, right? I mention them in my prayer 3 times a day. But the idea of ushpizin, that's a late comer into our tradition. It is based on the Kabbalist. And therefore, it fascinates me that we have so much in our tradition, in the Torah about the holiday, in the Talmud about our holiday, to go ahead and bring Kabbalistic teachings that are brought down to the in a way, and that becomes the ikar, that becomes the main theme and message of the holiday, something that I don't really love. But I have to play around, and then the kids, would come and say, yeah, tonight Yitzchak's here. And I would say, yeah, Yitzchak's, where exactly is he sitting? Like, we would have those conversations until I would try to process it, that perhaps we could learn messages, that Yitzchak was a person of righteousness, whatever it is, you would come up with a message to apply. But what is it really about? What is it really about? So, the Kabbalists, I'll teach you something from their field, and it works as follows. There's something they call the Sfirot. Familiar with them? A little bit. I hope not too much, because then you'll be floating. But the Sfirot. And that is that there are attributes. There are God's attributes. God's a God of mercy, God of justice. He is a God of truth, right? He is the God of magnificence. He is the God of eternity, right? He is the God that is really the foundation of existence, and He's the God of kingdom. Okay, that's the God. There are seven individuals, and these individuals represent, each one of them represents one of the attributes. And as they were in this world and did nice things and good things, it brought this attribute into the world. Who are the seven individuals? So let's go through them, because the Shpizin. Avram. Yosef, David. Now, so again, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David. So all of you here, which is very interesting, seem to be serious Kabbalists, and I'll tell you why. Because you did not give us the list in a chronological order. What did you do? You gave Yosef, you placed Yosef after Moshe and Aaron. Right? Why did you do that? That's how it's listed, right? I've shared with you this story that when I was 17, my grandparents in Cleveland. Yeah. Told you that you remember these things. But my grandparents in Cleveland had on their stairs going up, right? These seven names. And what's interesting is that when I was staying there, they were staying on the main floor, and I was upstairs in the hot, it was the upper floor, and in Cleveland, Ohio. And I noticed at the time that the seven names that were there, they had these framed, with seven of them on the stairs, they were placed in a chronological order. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, and David. So at the time when I was a little bit studying these kind of things, I went in and I switched it. So late at night, I switch it, right, as I'm going up, because I felt it has to be the way it's done by the Kabbalists. But my grandfather was a yeke, right? And a yeke, if there's something that's not in place, they sense it. And by next morning, by 6:45 a.m., as I'm walking down, it was back the way it was before. Right? This is what it is. They pick these things up. So now, when you look at these names, what they symbolize, let's go through them. Avraham, we say, is the attribute of chesed. So there's no doubt, if you want to do a shpizin, first night of Sukkot, you could sit down and you could talk to the family about the value of chesed, of welcoming people, smiling to people, bringing happiness to people. That's 100%. Night number 2, you want to go ahead and talk about Yitzchak, magnificent. You talk about justice, right? Or demanding self-improvement, right? This was a person that did not interact so much with the world, but demanded perfection from himself, Mr. Din. Right? Fine, you want to talk about overcoming temptation. You want to teach the kids that when the meal is finished, you don't say, where's dessert? But you wait a few minutes to be sure that others are ready for dessert. That's second night of Sukkot, perfect time to do it. Night number 3 is Emet, right? Emet, talk about the truth. Who symbolizes that, believe it or not, in our tradition? Yaakov. How come, you ask, right? He went ahead, he switched things around, right? This is a question that has to be dealt with, but we do see Titen, Emet, LeYaakov. Needs clarification, no doubt for that. Night number 4. So we're going with our Kabbalistic order. Night number 4 is Moshe Rabbeinu. What is Moshe? Moshe is eternity, Netzach. And the way I know it is when we take out the Torah, we say the Shekha Hashem HaGedula VaGevura VaTiferet VaNetzach VaHod. And those words actually correspond to these 7 attributes. So Moshe Rabbeinu is Netzach. What he does is eternal. No other prophet is going to reach his level of clarity. And therefore, the words taught and the messages conveyed by Moshe Rabbeinu remain until today. 3,500 years later, we could go ahead, and we're not eating Yom Kippur because Moshe Rabbeinu understood, and what he does is for eternity. He's Netzach. Afterwards, Aharon, you could talk about Hod, right? The beauty, magnificence, the garments of the Kohen, to beautify things that relate to our tradition, a beautiful, parocha, sefer Torah, whatever it is, to beautify things. Then comes Yosef. Yosef had the ability to overcome temptation, and that is what's fundamental, that as Jews we have to understand that those natural tendencies we have, because we are in some ways like animals, overcome them. Message for night number 6. And message for night number 7 is Malchut, the kingdom of God, right? That there is a God, that He is our king. When we want to value someone, when we want to appreciate someone, Malchut, that's those 7. Focusing on Moshe Rabbeinu, my father said the following. If Moshe Rabbeinu is eternity, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he does something, that remains with the people of Israel for all generations. Now, as a nation, unfortunately, we just read in Parshat Haazinu that we're going to be away from Eretz Yisrael for a long time. Right? Exile, the concept of exile has its roots in this parsha. We're going to be sent away. What happens if we're sent away from Eretz Yisrael? And just as any other nation, if they are uprooted from their homeland, you ask the question, now it's playoff season for sport fans, right? If let's say you meet someone from Boston, right? And they live in Toronto for 4 decades. Are they still fans of Boston?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. What about their children?
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay, that's what's the right answer. So what happens is that you come to a place, right? You start identifying. The kid doesn't want to go to school unless he's a specific personality. But in most cases, the kid wants to be like the rest of the friends, and he wants to go ahead and cheer where they cheer, and mourn when the team loses, when they mourn. He wants to be like everyone else. Correct? If Jews are going to be exiled, it would be very, very natural that after 2 generations, they simply forget their link, and the yearning to a homeland is gone, is vanished. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that Moshe Rabbeinu establishes something for eternity. That for Netzach, the people of Israel should always be away, even when they are away from the land, should be looking, that their heart should be in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore he tells them, Mineged tiret haaretz, I want you to be in that state. To be there where you see the land, and you can go there and develop a yearning for the land of Israel. Because the yearning of Moshe Rabbeinu, that feeling that he had, of I am there and I can't make it in. I would love to go and I would do anything to go in. Midrashim indicate that he was willing to give away the right of leadership and to enter like anyone else. He wanted to make his way to Eretz Yisrael. God placed it in Moshe Rabbeinu, and that became Netzach. That is for eternity. That is for eternity. The Jew yearns Eretz Yisrael. And it's interesting, you talk about the stories in Europe, like they say that the Chatam Sofer was a Moel, and someone brought him a piece of wood for the handle of the knife from a specific tree in Hebron. There's a tree in Hebron where there's a legend that it's the Eshel of Avraham Avinu, and that is something that he used. And then he had a painting. Someone painted the Temple Mount for him. Throughout the ages, Jews always wanted something from Israel. And there are stories that when you would have a messenger, someone that saw the land of Israel, would come to the shtetl, the whole shtetl would come around to hear some kind of stories. The guy could share whatever he wants, but the fact is it showed basically the nation throughout the ages had a yearning for Eretz Yisrael. That's our identity, and that's how we survived. We kept that connection because it was Netzach. It became part of this eternal structure of who we are. This is what is established here in a parsha that talks about our difficult journey. The fact that we have a shaky foundation. Jews have a shaky foundation, and we only survive because of the Hashgacha Elyonah, because God watches over us. we survive as well because it was established for eternity that we yearn Eretz Yisrael. I think we're privileged in this generation, right? Privileged in this generation. That I think I could say that we all visited Eretz Yisrael, and we're in an era, we have people running, going, well, like, Arthur, when are you leaving? Matzah Yom Kippur. So this is a magnificent generation we live in, that we could enter into Kanfei Nesharim. In other words, if you would have a vision 3,000 years ago of an airplane, what would you call it? That you're going on eagle's wings, basically. So we are going on eagle's wings back and forth, and let's appreciate the wonderful gift. And appreciation is appropriate not just for Thanksgiving, but appropriate for this season. And may we indeed merit a Shana Tova, Gmar Chatima Tova. Thank you for coming, and a good day to all. Thank you.